Welcome to Luca's podcast, where we dive into the life of incredible personality. And today, here with me, I have a really special guest, someone that I really truly admire, and I'm honored to have in front of me Salvatore Calabrese, also known as the Maestro. Salvatore, for me, is not just a mentor, he's the bridge in between history and innovation. Welcome, Salvatore.
Thank you. Wow. Can you do it again? Yeah, I love this kind of introduction.
I think it's very short already. It's very short, honestly. Usually, we start from the beginning, right?
How long do we have?
45 minutes, it should be enough. Please, knowing you, and I've been lucky enough to be in your, being visiting your birthplace, Maiori. Everything starts from there. Would you like to take us back in time and tell us a little bit how Maiori shaped who you are today? Starting from the beginning.
Well, we really need to go really far back. 1966. I was an 11 years old boy who was quite, let's say, not easy to keep. I used to run around the street, basically. And my dad thought that in the summer holidays, not to let me run around the street, he found me this little job in this Hotel Regina Maiori. It was not unusual to have a child to help out. It really wasn't. It was not bus layering. It was a need. It was something to keep yourself busy in that respect. And I started this little hotel called Hotel Regina Palace in Maiori on the Amalfi Coast. And in 1966, I could truly say that I experienced the Dolce Vita in those periods, where people used to really make an effort to dress up. I remember that people used to come from the beach. I used to go upstairs, and then they used to come down in the afternoon, on the early evening, and the aperitivo started. People were elegantly dressed. You smoke, obviously, and there was people used to know what they want, how to drink in that respect. And when I started in 1966, I remember that my very first duty, my first job, I used to get up around 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and I used to go into the hotel restaurant where I used to cut the bread for breakfast. And I remember that I had to cut each slice precisely, all right? So much so that eventually I made a mold where the slice of bread had to fit in that mold, right? And even at young age, I became to be quite perfectionist in that. And my second duty which was for the rest of the day, it was to go down to this little bar, where it was hosted by this, my very first mentor, Signora Fellow. Signora Fellow was a person that he traveled the world, a real poor, a really good-looking man, and he spoke several languages. He knew how to charm the socks off of every woman. It was kind of if you remember the film Casablanca with Humphrey Bogart.
Sure.
Where Humphrey Bogart was wearing this impeccable cream jacket, and he could make the dream come reality to everyone who used to be in his club. And that was Signor Fellow. And it really taught me a few lessons that I carry with me even today. So as I say, every morning what I used to do after cut the bread for breakfast, I used to go down to this little bar, switch on the coffee machine and clean up the bar. There was a task that I had to do. But every morning, as soon as the coffee machine was ready, I used to make the coffee at the chef. And I used to bring the coffee to the chef. And every morning as I walk into the kitchen, I used to say to the chef, "Good morning, Chef Paponzo." And the typical chef, he never used to raise his eyebrow on me, never used to be interested by me. He was only interested to have his coffee. That's how his day used to start, right? But one morning, as I walk into the kitchen, this is, I said, "Good morning, Chef Alfonso." And he wasn't sitting at his usual place, but he was actually cleaning a very large fish. And he looked at me and he said, "What's so good about it?" And grabbed the fish and threw the fish at me. And I didn't know what to do. Either catch the fish or try to avoid the fish. I caught the fish and I fell on the floor facing this fish. It was just as half of the size as I was. So he came over, picked his fish up and walked away. And even on those days, I used to be curious to figure out what did I do to upset the chef. So when Signor Raffaello came, I told him of the fish eater, what happened. And he gave me one of the most important lessons in my career. He told me, you did not read his mood. What he meant about that everyone who comes to your bar across the counter, not every person wants you to bring the sunshine to them. Wait, read the customer. Wait and see what he actually wants, how he wants you to interact with it. And that's how you make the dream come to reality to people, by making sure that whatever they want is the first encounter, which is the most important thing. And maybe eventually you can bring the sunshine to them, but don't bring your sunshine only because you feel like. That was one of the biggest lessons.
Wow, that's impressive. So, do you think, is there any other lesson that you learned at age of 11 when you were at the Regina Palace?
Well, I worked in the bar with Signor Raffaello from the age of 11 to the age of 15, the whole season. I mean, I remember the age of 12, I learned how to make the Americano because it was the things to ask, right? And then one day I remember, that's a funny story. That's one of the reasons maybe I love Negroni, is because I had a real funny encounter with the Negroni. One day, Signor Raffaello was chatting with these two very beautiful lady, and this gentleman came to the bar and he asked for a Negroni, and I did not know what to do. Go and interrupt Signor Raffaello that he was really in a deep conversation with this two lady, or make the Negroni. And I decided, because obviously I saw Signor Raffaello make the Negroni so many times, that I decided to make the Negroni. And but then Signor Raffaello noticed what I was doing. He allowed me to finish the Negroni, but then he walked behind the bar. He took the Negroni away from me, and he took me around the back, and he gave me a gentle slap. And he said, "Don't do something that you're not old enough to do. Be respectful, especially with a great classic." And that's one of the reasons that every time, or maybe when I make the Negroni, I do a cross, Padre, Figlio, Spirito Santo, and a duck, just in case he's going to be behind me to slap me. And that's one of the things that was impressive. Another thing as well, I remember when I picked up the shaker the first time and I was trying to shake, and there was like a vibrator, and you never know how to shake. And Signor Raffaello stopped me and he said, "Hold on, do the 3 steps, And I said, "What do you mean, Signor Raffaello?" He said, "Do 3 steps." He said, "I still don't understand." And he said, "The 3 steps." He said, 1 step, 2 step, 3 step. That means allow the shaker from the top, do 1 step down, and your wrist moves and then goes up, right? So you do the 3 step down and 3 step up. And then you start to learn how to move your wrist and know your body. It's all about the wrist motion, and so there's many different things, many different stories that made who I am today, basically.
Impressive. The shake, we see it quite a lot when we come to the Donovan or the Velvet, so that's beautiful. This day, you are a mentor, you are an entrepreneur, you are a bartender, you are a leading figure in our industry. But back then, when you were 21, you were one of the youngest maitre d' on the Amalfi Coast. Is that correct?
Indeed.
And how that responsibility shape your service of today?
Well, I worked behind the bar from the age of 11 to 15. And then I started moving in the restaurant, obviously in the summer period, which again, it was about summer. Summer just earned some money. My dad passed away. passed away when I was 12. So I carry on to help out. My mom was a single woman who raised us, basically. So I just carry on with this. And my dream was really to be a captain of a ship. I love the sea. I really love the sea. And one of the things I want to do a naval school. But at the age of 17, I had an incident on my left eyes, which left my left eyes almost blind. I see shade, basically, but I don't see very well. And because of that, I failed the physical test. And then I joined the Navy, and I failed with physical test because I couldn't see properly. So I always say, I did not choose hospitality. Hospitality chose me. And from that moment, I thought, well, if I cannot fulfill my dream, then I have to do something else. So I throw myself in this world of the hospitality. And with the blessing of my mom, I started to go abroad in the winter. And in the summer, I used to come back down to the Amalfi Coast. And going around, learning new culture, new ways, I was developing a skill, a specific skill. I've always been very clever with space or create a theme, right? Or see what needs to be. And I was noticed with that, so much so that the owner of the hotel where I used to work, because I always to show a leadership. One summer, the old Maître D, retired, couldn't make it, and they chose me. He said, do you want the task? I still have the letter that he sent me while I was here in the UK in 1977, 77, 78, asking me if I want to take that challenge. And I thought to myself, I was 21, right? And I thought, do I say yes or do I say no? But I was quite eccentric. I was quite strong mentally. Remember, I grew up from nothing, I'm a self-made person, and I took that challenge. And I was 21, and I remember the very first month I had 27 employees under me, 27. And most of those guys were the people who taught me, right? Much older than I was. And I remember the very first months, everybody used to call me by my first name. And now, only because you have a position doesn't give you the right. They say from now on, you have to call me the Mac. You own the respect. You have to make sure that people understand why you're there, right? And the first thing I did, on the Amalfi Coast, you used to work in the summer. You used to work 7 days a week. 7 days a week, you used to do breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Everybody used to start at 7 o'clock in the morning for breakfast. The whole team, because the restaurant was big, and each one of them had a station. So if you have a station, you have to run your station. So what I did, I convinced the owner that I had quite a large room downstairs, the floor below, that he did not use, to create the very first breakfast room that it was not existing on the Amalfi Coast, to divide work. So people, instead to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, now they can get up at 8 o'clock in the morning and clean up the restaurant, which was ever cleaned properly, right? At the time in the morning to set up breakfast, to set up a mise en place, and create a team, just a specific team once a week, rotated, of a team that of 6 people to do breakfast, to do the breakfast. They used to get up and they used to finish early. So whenever they finish early, they used to be off for lunch, which wasn't existing that. So they had more time off, right? I managed to do a rota that each one worked at the team, so they had the day off.
You had them to time manage their work system.
Well, yes, evening I come, and then, one of my hobbies, wine. I know a lot about wine. A lot of people don't know about. I know I won't call myself a master sommelier, but I do know about wine. It's something that always intrigued me. And so I started to choose better wine. We used to sell more. You used to make more money, people. And after 1 month, from the youngest to the oldest, they start to call me Maître, and that's how we start. Impressed. And then I met my wife in 1976, and
I was about to say that. I was about to say that because, in your words, what is capturing me is two things. One, the fact of your family really close to you in your journey. You said, blessing to my mother, I decided to take the role as a maître d'. And that's for me, is so beautiful, it's so respectful. It seems to be the manners, they are there. Even though, as you mentioned, that you unfortunately lost your father, you had to make yourself, build yourself a great human.
because I did not have somebody who could give me a guide, which when you grow up as a child, you're trying to self-made yourself. It's not like if I used to fight. I mean, I must be honest here. I'm hot-headed that's what happened to my left eyes. I never retreat in that respect, but. It's not like that. If you go into a fight and you say, "Okay, listen, I'm going to tell my dad." There wasn't such a thing. That you said, you accept it out yourself. That's it. You have to sort whatever came to you. You had to find a solution to find a solution. So, and the best time, sometimes it was, take anything that used to come to you.
Yes, indeed. But the second part that it really took my attention is the sensibility that you had towards discipline. Since the fact that you started Regina Palace to as a maître d', like I had this feeling that is inside you, the fact that you are really motivated and disciplined, but respectful towards the people working with you, collaborator or people, and I really feel it in your words, right? In 1980, you decide to make a move, right? From Amalfi to London.
Yeah.
How was that feeling inside you, and why did you move to London?
Well, as I say, I met my wife in 1976, a holiday romance. And then my wife used to coming back to the Amalfi Coast to spend the time with me. And every summer I used to do that 2-3 times in the summer. Eventually she asked me if she could come and stay with me. So I asked my mom, to allow us to stay with us, right? My mom, she was very much a woman of a modern time, although she was from Calabria. She could see, she could read me. She always trusted me. And so she, so started to come and stay with us. And eventually my mom saw a great woman for me, right? And she actually pushed me to say, trying to understand what you have in front of you, and so I had a blessing from her. And then in the 80s, I said to my mum, I think, she actually was her. I said, why don't you stay in London instead to come back here in the summer, make a living, a life with Sue there in London? And I thought, well, you have to listen sometime, and that's what I did.
And you listen well.
I did listen well. So I started to live in London. We bought a house together, a flat in those days. Then we got married, and then we had, we were waiting for our first son. And I remember in 1982, there was a period that I wasn't very happy for what I was doing. Where I was working wasn't giving me what I really want. It was a typical Italian restaurant, La Pavona at that time, I remember. And my wife, she is quite responsible for a few things in my life. And apart, she always been behind me, giving me strengths and never make me missing anything in that respect. She find an advert in the Evening Standard where they were saying, Duke's Hotel, Duke's Bar, looking for bartender. And she brought me these adverts. She said, the Duke's, this little hotel is looking for a bartender. I thought, well, that's interesting. And it might be nice to go back into the hotel and to go back into the bar. So I went for an interview. She actually arranged, she called the hotel for me, to arrange the interview. So I went to the Dukes, and when I met Mr. Lennon, the front of the house manager, the manager there, and I presented myself, and he said, well, where you been working? I said, well, I started in the bar, and all my CV that I had, it was about restaurant manager. And he said, well, but we're not looking for a restaurant manager. We're looking for a bartender. And I said, well, I love the bar. That was my very first experience. I worked in the bar, and I think I can do the bar. And that was very convincing. And he said to me, well, I'll let you have a go, right? While we were looking for another bartender, maybe. Okay, let's see. So I served as a part-time, right? And I started the 3rd of December, 1982, right? And the 23rd of December, 1982, Mr. Len called me downstairs in the office and, thank you very much for your help, but we had found the bartender that we are looking for. So you can imagine, mortgage, a child on the way, and you start to get to worry a bit, but you need a lucky break in life. And what happened when this guy stopped, this new bartender, a customer asked him for a hot drink. But what he did, he spilled the paraffin on top of the bar counter and he lit the paraffin. And so the bar went into flame with the customer, right? So his career went up with the smoke and mine started with a flame because some of the customers were asking for me. And so Mr. Lennon called me back and he said, if you wish to have the job is yours. So that was 27th of December, 1982. And after 6 months, I became to be the head bartender because we were only two of us. And that was how I started to bloom because I'm a very eccentric. Maybe, I always ways how to make the place. I always believe, look after the house looks after you. Right? And at the Dukes at that time, I used to have a percentage of the sales, but the wages was nothing, maybe £50 a week, right? And I could see the potential, but the bar was only 6 tables.
Yeah, they were incentivate you,
Yeah,
to push your guest, of course, to drink more, because that's why you had the percentage. Wow.
yeah, that's what the way it was. It wasn't service charge, but you had the percentage of sales. It was 10%. I still remember.
How busy was the team? You said 2 bartenders.
Bartender. But the wages, it was little. And, the bar in a very, very busy week, we can only make maybe £400 to £500 a week. Nothing really, if you think about it.
You cannot make a living out of it.
You could not make a living out of that. You really couldn't.
One fun fact about the Dukes, from my point of view, has been the fact that you introduce liquid history. You've been offering rare cognacs, rare spirits into the Dukes. How the idea came about?
Well, exactly that. As I say, you're always trying to figure out the way how to make more money, to make a bigger sales. And at the Dukes, I couldn't work with quantity. So one day I thought, well, if I can't work with quantity, I have to create quality. How do you create quality, right? So sounding quite unusual. So I thought, Dukes, very historical name. London, very historical town. I was facing a painting of Duke of Wellington in the bar, which you think about the Waterloo Battle, 1815. And I had all this history around me. But then I was looking at the bar, and I got all this history, but how can we be part of history? We can see it, we can read it, we can touch it, we can feel it. And one thing no one thought about, it was actually to give the opportunity to drink it. Liquid history, right? An idea that really blew on me. So, okay, that would be great. I want to sell history, but how do I do that? Right? First of all, I had to have the consent from the management. So I went for the F&B manager. I said, I have a brilliant idea. And so what is it? I like to do this. I like to sell liquid history. And I told them the concept. And he told me to leave the office, a waste of time. It is an idea that can never work. And you will never be able to find anything that you want. And it will cost too much money and you will never be able to sell that. But from him, I went to the general manager trying to sell the idea. And the general manager told me the same thing. Deja vu. There you go. I am stammered. I have a half a Calabrese blood. And as you know, Calabrese, we're hard-headed, right? When we stun, that's it, right? And I wasn't let it go. I thought, I'm here for a reason, right? They need to understand that I'm here for a reason. But I was lucky once again because the owner, Mr. Rutt, used to come to the bar and he used to like me. And one night I started to tell him about my idea of selling liquid history. And he was so captivated by the idea that he didn't do no more. He said, Salvatore, go ahead. I will support you. I will finance the idea. So you can imagine how popular I was with my general manager and the F&B manager that I went above their head. But now I have the idea, and to put that forward is not easy. Because now I start to look at old wine shop like Mary Brothers in German Street from the 70 member. And they didn't have anything that I'd want. It couldn't be wine because it oxidized himself as a short day. It had to be spirits. It had to be, in those days, in the 80s, cognac. It was the spirits that people used to ask more than whiskey. It was the after dinner star, I will always say cognac is one of the most noble spirit that there is. And I remember in the old days that I used to encounter some very old bottle of cognac, ancient bottle. And I thought, well, I need to find something as such. I used to go to an auction, but there was no market. There was nothing as such. It's not what you see today that now everybody's searching for cognac or for liquid history, sell the story, sell the history. I started that, I brought this idea to the world. And, but then persevere. One day I was talking to a customer in the bar who he just inherited the mansion of the dad, his father. And he said that he had this wine cellar. And some of the spirit that he had there, some old spirits, and he don't know what to do with that, right? So I thought, I saw the opportunity, and I said, would you mind, that I'll come and have a look? He said, of course, Salvatore. We became quite friendly. And so I went to see, and he had an incredible cellar, right? Lots of wine. The father was collector. But, he had this old bottle, very old bottle of cognac, some whiskey. And I said to him, I asked him, I said, can I buy one bottle to start? And I bought a bottle of High in 1914, the year of the lady. All the men were in war, and it was known as the year of the lady because it was an exceptional year. And the lady made the vintage, the cognac. And I sold with the idea of the beginning of the very first World War. And I sold that bottle in a week at £25 a shot in 1983. All right?
It's like £150 now.
And that's where it started. And because I could prove I could do it, I went and bought the whole collection, right? And Mr. Rapp allowed me to do that. And that was the beginning. And I took that bar from £400 a week in a good week up to £10,000 a table. Boom, boom. And now the bar became to be known as the crazy Italian guy who sells liquid history. And people used to promote all over the world, right? To experience or something that they could never do anywhere else. Drinking cognac from 1812, Tchaikovsky, the British World, Washington, Amsterdam, 1811, Napoleon March number 2 to Russia, issue no better, the year of the common. And you start to think about it because what I used to do, quite cleverly, I used to associate the vintage, the year, with the cognac, right? And some of the bottles I wish, and with that, by collecting and I developed my network, I used to find a bottle of whiskey, a whole bottle of rum, a whole bottle of liqueur, some old bottle of Quina Lillet. I start to collect myself. And I start also making vintage cocktails. That's something no one used to do. I remember I had some nephews around 17 years old that I wish I still had them, right? That another bottle is worth over 50,000 baht. And I used to do Mai Tai. We're selling it all even for £5 in Mai Tai. Some of the crazy thing, the old fashioned by making with an old bourbon from 1890 when I was a bit from 1900. And whenever I used to find old bottle, I used to say, well, I could do some old rye whiskey. I clear that you clear. I can do this without that. Yeah. I think like you really like did a remarkable change in the history of cocktail, because it's something that it could be available to everybody if they only had the chance to think a little bit outside the box. And you were like, I need to make something that makes a remarkable point of view of my bar. And it's been, I think, super. Another remarkable thing that actually you've been doing, and we know you these days for it, is the creation of a few drinks that I would like you to take me through. One, which I'm talking about, the red martini. The breakfast martini. Okay, I think that is the first one, and the spicy 50. Okay, but before that, I think it is important that you need to understand that the Dukes, the real difference about me, who really put me in the map globally, right? It was in 1985 with the idea of selling the direct martini, which the Dukes are still doing today. Super cold, super dry. I always say it took God 6 days to create the world. It took me 5 to create the perfect martini. And why? I had this customer called Stanton Delaplane who stayed with us in the hotel for over a week. But this gentleman, from the very first day, he used to come in the middle of the afternoon, and he used to be a 2 martini man, right? And he used to say from the first moment, may I have a very cold and dry martini? To make it cold, obviously I was over diluted by stirring in a mixing glass, not to make it cold. And he used to say, yes, this is cold enough, but it's not dry enough. Now, the second drink, I used to do opposite. And I used to make it dry, but less cold. And he used to drink his drink, but he used to make a comment. It wasn't a complaint, but he was making a comment, right? And that was from the very first day. But the second day and the third day, I started to have a nightmare. Because one thing I always learned, whatever the customer wanted should have. And luckily I did it, I persevered, because I could be a very arrogant bartender, right? By saying to that gentleman, listen, if you do not like the way I make my martini, please, that is the door, go and find somewhere else that make the martini the way you want. But luckily I persevere. And that's one of the reasons I'm here today, talking about my experience and who I am, because maybe that will make the change about me. Because on the 4th day, it was on a Friday, and I went down to the staff canteen and I saw a guy who was very particular, much malt vinegar wine wants on his chip. They used to have the old-fashioned dash bottle, yeah, and he was moving the chips away from the plate, put one dash and eat the chips. I thought, that's clever. Now I know how to control the dryness. And I took the dash bottle upstairs, washed it, right, and put the dry vermouth in. Now I had to make it cold. How do I ever make it cold, right? So Duke's was, as you know, is a 2.5 meter bar, very small bar. So there was a sink that I washed my glass for 12 years by hand, a picnic basket, minimalist. A picnic basket under the sink where I had my ice, which I used to lean every day to do that, to make a drink. That's why I bought that bag. And a little station where I used to have my glasses. And then a little domestic fridge. In this domestic fridge, there was a little freezer, big enough to put 1 bottle of gin and 2 glasses. Right? On the 5th day, Miss Delaplane came, and he asked for his very cold dry martini. Every day was very specific. He wouldn't change. So what I did, I took the glass from the freezer, which was very cold. I took a gin from the freezer, which was very cold. Obviously, I had my mixing glass ready with the ice, but don't ask me why. I thought the glass is cold, the bottle is cold, and I went directly in the glass, all right? Pour the gin straight in the glass. Then I pick up the vermouth and dash the vermouth on top of the glass, on top of the gin. So it creates the aroma at a very classic cup of the vermouth, which is important, so it doesn't just disappear, right? The vermouth now is like oil, right? It's slick, right? But the taste is that. And a twist of lemon. I gave it to him. He drank it. He didn't complain, didn't make no comment. He asked for the same again, the second one. And because he did not complain, I made it the same way, the direct way. I gave it to him, he took 1 sip and he walked away. And I said, bloody hell, this guy every day said it's cold enough, but it's not dry enough. It's dry enough, but it's not cold enough. Now it's not make no comment, but at least he don't not complain.
You had the sense of suspense on
No,
that.
you wake up short, but no, he walked away, but fine. Few hours later, he came back down and introduced himself who he was, Stanton Delaplane, a very famous journalist. And he brought me a fax. In those days, it was about a fax, not about a folder that we are today. And he brought me a fax. And he was a journalist who used to write for San Francisco Chronicle, Los Angeles Town, New York Town, a very famous person. And he says, Salvatore, I enjoy your martini so much, so I wrote a little piece. And in this little piece in 1985, the history began. And he wrote, if you ever go to London, you must make a stop at the Duke's Bar, where Salvatore will make you the best martini ever on the planet. And every time he used to come to London, he used to write about it. And everybody started to come for the martini. So much so the Dukes became to be known for the best martini in the world. And I started to make my fame internationally because of the martini. So much so that I said, Her Majesty, I got on, he went up, not 1 martini, but actually 2 martini. So I do have a royal crest about my martini. And anyone who was anybody, from Sean Connery, Mick Jagger, everybody used to come for the martini in the afternoon and for the vintage spirits in the evening. So the bar was really a full Monte style, right? And then in 1994, and I mean, through the martini, if you really think about it, I brought a difference behind the bar that people do not know, right? I brought the freezer behind the bar.
It seems to be that you have the feeling to see the third dimension in everything you do. Like everyone see one thing, one way, and you see that way. On the top of it, you see the escape, the third dimension that you can fit in some way. And this is one of those, right?
Yeah, it is, because in those days, a bar did not have freezer. A freezer was not belong behind the bar. And I opened up the very first bar of Salvatore 50, where I had that line of freezer behind the bar, not just fridge, where all my glasses went in there, not just the martini glass, but it was the highball, the champagne glasses, the old-fashioned, the ice, inside. So it was the very first bar which made a difference. And then everybody followed. So it was the martini, super cold, super dry. And nice to know that do not leave the legacy behind. Because, for me, it's very important to look after the house. And I left the legacy at the Dukes. So much so that Alessandro to Gilberto, my number 2 at that time, Gilberto Preti, followed, carry on. And now Alessandro Palazzo still carry on. I create a little trolley that to go in a room to make the martini, which is still stand. And to see the legacy still carry on. You should never be bigger than the place. You should leave your legacy. And if you are capable to do that, why not? And it's nice to see. And, and then obviously in 1994, I moved to the Lanesborough, a new bar, new legacy. I created the theater of the bar. I started getting bold to the other way because I started thinking about what else? What else? Cocktail, when you used to make a cocktail, cocktail was an escape to use cheap ingredient, right? And I created a new cocktail culture by not using cheap ingredient. For me, in the spirits, it was the canvas of the cocktail, where there is longevity into the drink, linger aspect, so better spirits, and no sweet and sour, fresh ingredient, right? Then I started to make the difference. And, but then we think about what is the dream for each one of us as a bartender is to able to immortalize ourselves with a great cocktail, and in 100 years time, somebody was still talking about. And that was my breakfast martini that I created in 1996. So it's almost 30 years. So I'm almost there, all right? And it's one of the, let's say, as a modern classic. And that's, again, thanks to my wife, because my wife, first of all, she convinced me to leave the Dukes because the Dukes was beautiful, but it was a person. I used to work on my own. It was two of us, right? And there was no team, and I could not develop, and I had a lot to give, and I want to work with the team. So when the Lanesborough came up, but also with the breakfast martini, and why that? Because every morning she sees me first thing in the morning. I'm not the person that you see right in front of you in the morning. It takes me 2 hours to look sharp. In the morning, I look crap. I look like all of us, or all of us. And I'm a very typical Italian. I want my coffee in the morning, so much so that I'm a freak with coffee. I travel the world. Wherever I go, I take a mocha pot with me, an electric mocha, so I have to make my coffee in the morning. And every morning I used to say to her, "Oh, I'm okay. I don't want any breakfast. I need to have my coffee. I'll be fine." But one day I must have looked worse than worse. She didn't do no more. She brought me this toast with marmalade on top. And when I started to, and she gave me a command. Had it. And as well as I do, we're trying to carry it, said we wear the trousers, but there is a time when you need to obey and you need to listen to your wife or to your woman. And I did. And when I started to eat this toast with the bitter, tangy flavor of the marmalade, it came with my taste buds. It was the time when I started to experiment with things. I used to experiment with garlic. I created coffee with garlic. I call it a garlic affair. I used to use salmon, smoked salmon in the cocktail, called Love Help, thing to bring the saltiness and the oily of the aspect of the surprise of the salmon. I used to play with balsamic vinegar, with truffle, things that people did not do. I used to experiment and bring in unusual ingredient, not like what we do today with the barber and things like that, in my own way, right? And this bitter, tangy flavor of the marmalade, it was playing with my taste buds. So what I did, I kidnapped the marmalade, and when I left home and to drive to work to the Lanesborough, I started to dream. What is important? When I said dream what you do before you do it. Why? Because you need to create a theme. You need to create an understanding of why you want to do it. And therefore, I need to create a cocktail, right, that has English heritage. The marmalade, bitter, tangy flavor of marmalade is very British. So I have to use spirits that reflects that. Pasticci, then I thought I need something sweet, right? But I didn't want to put sugar because I want to do a martini style. It had to be dry, control, because it's high ABV, 40% ABV. It's a bit more drier as an orange liqueur. And obviously the sweetness, the sourness, I had to be to balance those, right, the lemon juice. And the time I arrived at the Lanesborough, I already had this picture in me to create this trend. But what was more clever, right? It was not just experimenting with the flavor, with the amount, the quantity. It was the name. And I called it the breakfast martini. a winning combination. Because when people start to read in the menu, breakfast martini, what is breakfast martini? Marmalade. What do you mean marmalade? And that was the winning combination. That was the beginning that everyone started to use jams in the cocktail. But then we think we create the world. We don't, because somebody else cleverly in the past, in the 30s, which I didn't even know, create a cocktail called the marmalade, totally different, but you use marmalade, right? Maybe a different style of marmalade, right? But and so you think you create something unusual and somebody else away. So we need to be humble what we do. We need to understand that, sometimes, the reflection with the journey of many of our couples that we know today are brought back from the past, from the daiquiri, the very first sour, to the sidecar. If you think about the change in the spirits, the same method, lemon juice and orange liqueur, you create in the different version, from the daiquiri to the sidecar to the margarita, just change the spirits. But this is the culture, but what is important, that you start to dream and you start to combine flavor and not forget about what happened in the past. So,
but I also would add in what you said is that the breakfast martini is a modern classic. Also because it's the way how you put it together, how we feel about the drink. It's so simply replicable around the world. The attachment on the flavor works perfectly. And it's something that is like, well, this is a good drink. This is like I can drink not just 1, 2, 3. And let's be honest, when we run bars, we look at the numbers as well. And we want to make sure that everything is aligned. Talking about numbers, you have been probably the only bartender in the world that actually crafted the most expensive cocktail in the world. Tell us everything about it.
Well, as you know, I'm always looking for new opportunities to let the bar talk about. And obviously because I can, and I have one of the funniest collection vintage spirits that there is. In 2012, when I had my bar Salvatore at Playboy, I started to think about what can I do, right, to make the difference. So I decided to make not necessarily the most expensive cocktail in the world, because that can be broken, right? But one thing that nobody has ever done in my lifetime and some many more lifetime, it was to make the world oldest cocktail. You would say, what do you mean world oldest cocktail? Well, I started to think about, I want to break the Guinness Book of Records to make the world oldest cocktail, that there is. But the Guinness Book of Records did not recognize world oldest, would only recognize the most expensive cocktail. So what I did, I made the most expensive cocktail in the world. A cocktail that cost me money. And we would just say, why will it cost me money? Because you had to justify the cost. When you want to break a record, you have to justify the cost of that cocktail. So I had to break it to say, this is what cost me the bottle of 1788, right? And without making any profit on top, right? So this is what cost me the bottle of Cumberland from 1770. This is what cost me the bottle of Curaçao from 1860. This is what cost me the bottle of Angus or Butter from 1900. And then you divide the percentage of volume, right? And you total up, right? And that is the cost. So every time I make Salvatore Legacy, it costs me money, right? Because I don't make any profit, right? But I want to break the Guinness Book of Records for the most expensive in the world do this. So I'll put 750 years of history in one drink, if you think about that, and make it the most expensive cocktail, which afterwards people made it more expensive than my cocktail, right? But then lately, last month in Dubai, I broke that record again. I sold the cocktail for £37,500. Okay.
That is an expensive.
Yeah, we see, I never stop.
That is for sure one of your.
And I don't think nobody else in the world will ever make a cocktail voice once to that.
Impossible. It's impossible to beat. You. One of the characteristics that is really embedded in you is the fact that you never give up, and you always pushing. I always talk to you about it. Every time I meet you, you have something to tell me. Something new is happening. Something like, and it's so inspirational. From my point of view. So beyond crafting cocktails, you have played a significant role as as a mentor for many of bartender of us. As a former president of the UKBG, what has been the most interesting initiative that you took along and it made the UKBG shine?
Well, in those days, in the 80s, late 80s, I joined UKBG in 1983. Because when I started the Duke, you're working on your own. So you want to be part of something. And I started to learn, how can I join something? And UKBG was very much alive, right? And it was an association for bartender to bartender. It was not a profitable association. It was true to give a skill in education and help each other, right? And I loved that. So it was the time when I met Peter Dorelli. He gave me the opportunity to meet people like Peter Dorelli, Giuliano Morandi, some iconic people. And I remember when the first time I went and met Peter Dorelli at the Savoy. Peter Dorelli was a master of hospitality, master how to welcome me people. When you were walking to the Savoy, the American bar, he was there, he was present, and he took me under his wing in that respect. We're still very much friends, and actually now it's me holding him under my wing and looking after him or wherever we go, somewhere, away. And I love the man.
We love Peter Dorelli. Peter, if you're listening, we love you.
He's the beast. He's the sir. And so UKBG gave me the opportunity. And again, I became to be chairman of London, the London area. And again, I made the difference with UKBG, because I started to see what can we do to not to have a meeting in the pub, right? We are about, why sponsor will bring their brand and not support us financially. So I started to change the way UKBG should change, right?
Knocking at the door.
Knock at the door and give it to the young guy, to the next guy. And so always being very involved in that aspect. And I love that. You always should give it back, something that you learn from others, right? And this, but... And through UKBG, I also learn, the classic. I go inspired about that. And so much so that I wrote my first book, the home bar, the classic cocktail book, which has been an inspiration for many people. That book sold out a mini copy. And today I wrote 13 books. My home bartender's guide is officially the world best-selling cocktail book ever, sold almost 2 million copies, and not many people knows that. I'm an expert on cognac. I'm one of the only expert on cognac, so much so that I wrote a book as a cognac, as a liquid history, which is in the British Library as a reference book. So I really immortalized myself, not just in a drink, but also in the literature. Which is nice to know that my books will be there for quite a few years. I hope forever. And it's I never stop. I never stop to think what else I could do, and I love that. And it's an inspiration for myself. But it doesn't really matter how further you go into your life. You never should stop learning, and today I'm still learning. Today I'm still learning from young guys. People like a guy like Federico Pavan, which is an amazing student. He's been with me for 13 years and now he's a master of his craft. He is better than me in the way of being creative. it's nice to see that, or people like Giancarlo Bancino, who was my student for 5 years, and I direct him in many different ways, and been an inspiration for many of these iconic people around the world that are making the difference today, and it's nice to see, that you bring a little bit of gold dust to those people, and be humble of what you do. Don't think only because, oh my God, this guy is God. I'm not God. I'm a no one. I'm a person that Luca. I embrace my guys. First thing I do when I walk in the bar, I shake, embrace all my guys, and I kiss my girls. They're working with me. And the last thing I do when I leave is doing the same, right? Because I could not be the maestro unless I embrace the people that I work with. And I can only be a good maestro as long as my team would like to play the same music that I like to play. Right? It's a joint effort. It is always said, remember the link. The link is, don't think only because a bar back is a bar back you misrespecting. Every person in your team is a link, and it's like a chain. You develop that chain. So learn how to bring that chain together and make it solid. So from the first person, if he's a bar back, I had the two of my bar back became to be the best bartender in the UK, right? And then when I had my bar Salvatore 50, Manuel Soro, who is a film star now, I embrace his personality. I don't suppress people. I want them to be who they are, and just to learn what I give to them, and take whatever they want from me, right? But they should always learn one thing: the art of hospitality. Okay, because yes, today we all talk about the art of mixologies, which is great, right? Because we see around the world so many great people like Simone Caporale, Giacomo Giannotti, some people that I admire them to see, many of them. And it's nice to see how artists they are, because this is an art form. Remember that you today, there is an art of making some great cocktails, some great drinks. Because in those days, in my times, bartender would not consider it. Would not consider it. It was just a bartender. Today, I hope I have helped. Today, we have a recognition as being a master of our craft. Right? But I learn how to do this craft from the young age. At the age of 12, I made my first Americano. At the age of 13, I attempted to make the Negroni. Everyone, step by step, can learn how to mix. That's just an art format which you can with experience. And obviously, we can craft better, right? But to be great at what you do, it's not just that, not one end. Because it's just one end, it's not about balance. You have to think about the other hand, this hand, which gave me longevity, what made me who I am today. And that is the art of hospitality. Know how to care, how to make people feel special, why they should come to you, why they want to be with you, right? And you embrace both of your hand. Now you can truly call yourself great at what you do, because you truly understand that it's not just the art to know how to mix. It is the bar is an art. The bar is a social place where you can make the difference to somebody. I create different wedding, join a perfect couple who got married, and I could tell a few stories. Also, I'm responsible for a few divorces. It's never been my fault because I gave them good time the night before, whatever it was. So for me, it's important to understand that that's what I do. I bring the best of the best to anyone who comes to me. But I'm learning with them, and that's what is exciting me, because every day is different. Every day there is a story to tell. I mean, last night at the Donovan, I had the customer Chris, that 6'4" giant of a person, big, strong guy, a Marine man, an American guy, right? He wrote to me, I made an impression to him 30 years ago, right? And he still followed me. Last night he couldn't bear, he embraced me like a bear, and he still, and it's nice that, I looked after him when he was on his own to be, to make him feel at home.
You create that attachment which is forever.
It's always
It's not just for a purpose.
And
It's genuine and forever.
Yeah, and it's not just about the vessel.
Yes.
Right? Because the vessel is just an indication of what we do. It's about also the other art. Okay.
How do you see the evolution of hospitality these days? So you have a massive experience from back in the days to now. What's your point about the evolution? How is it evolving from your point of view?
Well, I think it is amazing. I mean, we spoke about Simone and even yourself, to create the art of shaking or the art of Schweiger. You give them an education point of view, which is good for people who wants to start. All right. For me, the bar is one of the greatest theater that there is. It's a true theater, right? Where you people come and they want to be entertained. And I always say, when you start, open this curtain, and now it's so short time, right? I know that the craft of bartender, thanks to people like you as well, and and to others, is safe. It is a recognition, right? But I would love to see a little bit more hospitality, a bit more caring, a bit more understanding what us, right? Because when you reach the age of being 40 and being behind the bar at all day and shake the shaker, use your music instrument, right? Because your shaker does not know how old you are. I was still shaking myself, right? Not as vigorous maybe as I once was, or as pastor once was. I was still doing it. I still love it.
But the melody is still the
same.
The violin is still played.
To me, still sings to me, right? But what is important that eventually somebody might be better than you, right? And only because it can be more recognized, the only thing that can make you to stand and be still around 59 years later, it's about the care that you give it to people, that recognition that you give it to your student, the people that they still call you maestro for a good reason, not because I asked to be called maestro. Actually, I am a maestro today.
Natural, we feel.
Yeah, natural. But I am a maestro today because in 2018 I was honored by from the Italian government to been given maestro d'arte mestiere. Master of my
Ordine di Merito della Repubblica Italiana.
This is another one.
It was later.
It was like later 2023.
Okay.
And that's what...
Because we're going to talk about that.
Okay. Well.
But I say, like, after like listening what you had to say, if you would give one advice to the new generation of bartenders that are just about to step into the bar in one sentence, what it would be?
Choose what you want. If you want to do this, do it with love and passion. Do it because you believe into it, all right? And whatever comes to your way, right? Be like a sponge and learn from others and make sure that whatever you learn becomes to be yours. And don't be arrogant. Arrogance should not be part of this world. Always embrace, always care.
What else we should say? I mean, like, I agree. I couldn't agree more. Now, we were talking about, you've been given so many accolades and you have a huge legacy behind. There is one part that really took my attention, and it was Ordine di Merito della Repubblica Italiana in 2023, if I don't mistake. How these accolades reflect your journey and dedication to your craft?
Well, maybe I'm duly Italian bartender to have the merit, which is great. The true recognition from your country to recognize what you've done, become to be a knighthood. That's what I am, a chevalier, cavaliere, but knighted is knighthood. I'm a sir, which is nice to know. But this recognition comes because I think I always brought my village, my town of growing up, to the education point of view, to be a real great ambassador to the Italian community, to always to represent my country in the best way possible. That is nice to figure that that your own country gives you that recognition. I mean, this makes me feel proud, real proud. Makes me, how can I say, almost brings tears in my eyes because
I can see it.
because when you get that recognition, it would be lovely to share it with my parents, at that time, because they're giving me the DNA, they're giving me the structure to do that. I mean, if there is any, if somebody would have tell me, Salvatore, what, if you have a person that you would like to sit in the present in the house, well, to have and share a drink with, maybe it would have been my dad, because he gave me an opportunity to start a career, right? And how much of him I am, because obviously as you're growing up, you learn how much more closer to your dad you are, and how great your dad was, So, and that's one of my biggest regret. I mean, maybe not to share any glory with my dad and say, thank you, Dad. You done something for me, and I can always never stop to appreciate that.
We are so sure that he's aware of everything you've been doing in the show, and he's so proud. Yeah, for sure. I can see your eyes. I can feel like I have a goosebump of what you're saying.
And I think I want to tell you a story because I think it's very, very important as a story. Yes. Why hospitality is great, right? And why we do things that it puts us in the stage of being recognized. And this, I've been lucky. I've been served anyone who's anybody, right? I met people like Fidel Castro, Nelson Mandela. I served several presidents of the United States. I served all the royal family from His Majesty today, the King Carl, to Her Majesty at that time, making a martini of that, and with the legacy of them, and Princess Diana, anyone who says anybody, Mick Jagger, Paul McCartney, Sean Connery, to hand that pleasure. Robert De Niro will walk into my bar, and as he walked in, I said, "Good evening to you, Mr. Mr. De Niro," and he says to me, "Who is Salvatore?" I said, "I am Mr. De Niro." He said, "Who? Why all my friends talk about you?" And I said, "Well, take your cup off and you can walk in and you will find out about it." But one story I wanted to tell you is about Stevie Wonder, who came to my bar, and I created a cocktail for him. He used to love something sweet and bubble, right? So I created a cocktail called Champagne Wonder. And he used to enjoy this Champagne Wonder so much so that he started to feel at home. I made him feel at home, relax. And I had my pianist called Brian, who was, playing along. And I noticed that Stevie Wonder was rocking his head, listen to the music. So I went to him and I said, "Steve, would you like to play?" And he said, "Salvatore, I would love to." So he stood up and I took him to the piano. And there where he started to play for over half an hour. Can you imagine how magical it was? Obviously, it wasn't good for business because for over half an hour, nobody was holding me anything. The bar was shut.
What wasn't the point?
There was no point. It was about that magical moment from the people who was in the bar listen to Steve Wonder live. But what was more magical for me, you talk about guys group scout, what was more magical for me, what makes my skin shimmy, and it was the fact that at the end of the evening when he stood up to leave, and I went to say goodnight to him, bye-bye to him, he soft put blue.
Stevie wonders to you.
And I asked him, I said, what's that for, Steve? And he said, from one artist to another. And that's what we can be. If we do what we do, we care and love and make people feel our own. And that's what he did. Wow, it's an art format that we should parry.
Wow. That is impressive. I have goosebumps for the second time in the next dream.
That's what I was at.
So, what legacy would you like to leave to the next generation of hospitality, bartending?
I think the legacy, everyone should make their own legacy. Don't try to follow a legacy of somebody only because he's made everything that he possibly could. Because I'll be honest with you, every dream for any bartender, maybe I have that. If you think about it, writing a book, immortalize yourself with the cocktails, trying to make and be different in anything that it is. But this journey has always been with people around me, right? It's never been on my own, family, wife, my kids, my parents. And the true legacy is that it doesn't really matter if you don't achieve everything that you want to achieve in life. But love what you do and love with great passion. And eventually your legacy will be what you want it to be.
That's dot. And
well, I can't say what legacy I can leave because it's not always, Luca, you brought many of my legacy alive, right? And obviously, in each one of them, you get an inspiration, and that is the greatest legacy that I could leave. Inspiration, being inspirational for somebody else. That's inspire.
Absolutely. And you truly are. You truly, truly are. Looking ahead, what project or goals are most exciting you? You have anything in the pipe? Can you share anything happening?
Yeah, well,
Some Maestro's collaboration?
Well, I don't stop. As you know, I don't stop. And I just opened up another bar in Florence, the Artemisia bar, which is beautiful. So I have a few places now in Italy, from Palermo to Rome to Florence. And my next project, it would be Milano and maybe Naples and maybe Sardinia. So, yes, I'm getting older, but I'm still young and strong and I'm passionate of what I do.
You're swinging like you were in Major in Amalfi Coast.
Of course.
That same speed.
And remember, one thing is just to finish you off. My dream, there was to be a captain of boats on my own, Now I could truly say I'm a captain of my own boats. I have a boat where I got, I have my license to navigation, all right? And so I had my other dream come reality.
That's it. That's it. Is the perfect parallelism in between the two. Or you are the captain.
Yeah.
Salvatore, how do you see the future of cocktails?
Well, I think our world of cocktail, it's incredible, Nothing reached the pinnacle, right? Where else we're going to do? What else we're going to do, right? And so much so that we need to rethink what we want to offer to our client, to our guests. And I think maybe the best format will be about simplicity. Go back to the roots. Make our drink a little bit more simple. Let our cocktail travel. Because till now, we made the cocktail so complex that it doesn't travel. We create a cocktail for the bar, only for that bar, right? Because only that bar can make it. Right? It's like a Hessen Blumenthal. when you start to be very eccentric in this style of cuisine, very catchable, right? Everything was manipulated, everything only he could make it. And to eat that food, you have to go to his place. But did he travel? No, right? Is he standing the time? No, right? So we need to think about, do we want to stand the time, right, to be known? It'd be nice that maybe you, Luca, or Simone, or Giacomo, everyone around the world, start to think about create things that are more simple, more approachable. Make sure that whatever you're going to create can be replicated. Because at the moment, none of our drink can be replicated. Yes, it's exciting. Yes, it's beautiful to do, and we should do it. But I always say in any cocktail list that you should create, pick up one or two that are simple to make and easy to travel, right? And come back a little bit more on the roots. And nothing is going to happen. Nothing is going to happen that we will get fed up just to spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours to be behind a laboratory to elaborate a specific drink, which it takes 3-4 hours to do it, right? And yes, it's good to do that because sometimes whatever you spend in the laboratory is easy to put it together behind the bar. But by doing that, if we start to see the less and less approach of using the shaker or mixing glass, our musical instrument, right? Everything is about open a bottle and pour it. Put ice in a glass and you pour it. You hear the music, and there is a few bars that they do that. You go there, it is soulless. Remember what makes a bar. The soul of the bar is not just the people who makes the noise. It is the feel of the bar. You hear that beat, that musical instrument, that it could be a shaker, that chat. It's not just about what would you like, a specific drink. It comes to you already done. It's or you might have the bottle next to you that you have to pour yourself. Yes, we reach in better skill, but we're not creating the legacy. Remember, what the legacy is. The dream of any bartender is to be able to immortalize yourself. So let's immortalize ourselves.
The message of having your drinks to travel the world, it's beautiful. It's really, really, really beautiful. After 1 hour and 45 minutes that we spent together, it comes to my mind, I see you and I look at you. We've been saying, you had a really tough beginning. You had a really strong experience in your life that changed so many things. What really keeps you inspired and motivated?
Well, it should be easy to answer that, but it's difficult to answer that as well, because in the meantime, what makes me motivate? Why skip for... I say once again, always I am maybe a perfectionist on anything that I do. I enjoy what I do. Whenever I do, I get inspired by my young guys, by my team. And what motivating me is that I think hospitality for me is timeless. And as long as I can give the sensible hospitality to somebody, to embrace somebody, to make the difference to somebody, even by just having a little chat, that is inspiring enough for me, which it's enough to motivate me to still doing it. And I think I got still a few years going. So guys, the Maestro was still rocking.
Pull your socks out. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, at this point, I would like to thank you deeply for your time and to share with us all the insights and everything you've been mentioning has been extremely inspiring, and I see you like an iceberg. Today, you just share a little bit more what's underneath, under the water. So, massive thank you to you. And guys, make sure you're going to see this beautiful gentleman at the Donovan's or the Velvet. Yeah, you know where to find him. He's probably gonna be there every day. So, in between.
No, every day. No.
I try to make it look professional, but yes, absolutely.
My soul will be there in any of my bars, so you will feel the beat. Yeah, you'll feel the beat.
Yes, the atmosphere is there. Remember, Salvatore is always watching you out. Also, thank you very much. Thank you for Amaro Santoni to help to sponsor this.